Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. In this video, we're gonna create a complete music player application with the help of foreground service and bound service together. In this application, we're gonna use these two services together in order to update our user interface, and also at the same time, we're gonna update our foreground notifications. So without wasting any time, let's get started. It's a very interesting project for you. So in this project, we're gonna use both foreground service and bound service. So for the foreground service, we have to show a notification to our user. So let's create our notification channel first. So for that, first I'm gonna create a class, and the class name is base application. This class will eventually extend application. In this, we are having lifecycle method on create. In the on create, I'm gonna check my build version stk int. If it is greater than or equals to build version code Oreo, then only I'm gonna create my channel, because notification channel was introduced by Android in Oreo version. So notification channel, and the requirement of notification channel will be three different things: notification channel ID, channel name, and lastly the channel importance. So for the channel ID and channel name, I'm gonna create here a const val. So channel ID, channel underscore ID. Next we are having channel name. Initialize this thing with channel underscore name. Now use this channel ID over here and the channel name. And in the notification manager importance default, by using this, I'm gonna send importance of this channel. Now it's time to use notification manager. So notification manager is a system service, so use get system service, and the name of your system service would be notification service. Typecast this thing into notification manager. With the help of notification manager, you can simply create your channel. Now go Android manifest, and in this add your base application, and on the top I'm gonna add permission for the post notification. Post notification was introduced by Android in Tiramisu or above Tiramisu version. So if you want to send notification in Tiramisu or above Tiramisu version, you have to take runtime permission from the user. Now it's a good time to create our service. So for that, I'm gonna create a class, and the class name is music player service. This class extends service. Make sure this service is coming from android.app package. In this, we are having couple of functions that we have to override. First, we are having onBind. So if you want to create a bound service, on that case, you have to return an instance of a class which implemented iBinder interface. So first, I'm going to create a class, and this class name would be music binder. This will extend binder. Binder is nothing but a simple class. This class is already implemented iBinder interface. Now go back to your music player service, and just on top of our music binder inner class, I'm gonna create a variable. It's an object of our inner class music binder. Simply return it from here. We are using here foreground service and bound service together. Now it's time to use here on start command. So here I'm gonna return start sticky, and now it's a very good time to create our notification. So for that, we are having a function, and the function name is send notification. In this, you can pass your track, a music track. This track is already created in the song file. So when you get the initial project from GitHub repository link, you will receive this file song. In this, you will notice a data class naming track. This contain our music file name, description, and the actual resource ID. So this resource ID is present in the raw Android source directory. We are having here 1 2 3 4 5 different mp3 files. Corresponding to that, in the drawable, we are having images 1 2 3 4 5, and this big image is actually used in our notification. Okay, so simply close all this stuff, and also in the song you will see we are having a list of songs which eventually return me a list of tracks. Now go back to your music player service. Let's create our notification. So for that, we are using notification compact. By the way, if you don't know about Android notification, you can check out my this video. In that video, I explained everything that you need to know about notification in Android. So notification compact.builder. In this, we have to pass our context, and next the channel ID on which we want to send this thing. Next, we are going to set up our title. So title is coming from track name. We are having description in a form of set content text. Here you can use track dot description. Now it's time to add action button, because our notification contains 3 different action button. We are having previous action button, then play pause, and lastly the next action button. So for the first action, which is previous, I'm gonna use here our drawable.previous. Title is previous. Next we have to create intent. So for that, we are having a function, and this function name is create previous pending intent. This will return me pending intent. Now in this, first we have to create an intent. I'm gonna pass my context and the component that we want to target. So I want to target my music player service. So use music player service class.java, and here I'm gonna add action in my intent. We are having three different action button. We are having play, pause, previous, and next. So corresponding to that, we are having three different intents that contains three different types of actions. So for that, on the top, I'm gonna create here const val. So for the previous, I'm gonna use here previous. For the next, I'm gonna use here next. For the play pause, I'm gonna use here play pause, play underscore pause. Now go to your create previous pending intent function, and in place of action you can use here previous. Now it's time to create our pending intent. Return pending intent get service, pass your context. Next you have to pass the request code, so I'm gonna pass here 0. Next intent, and lastly the flag. So flag is coming from pending intent flag immutable or pending intent flag update current. So similarly we are having two more pending intents. So just copy this stuff, paste it over here. This is for the play and pause. Change the action from previous to play pause. Simply copy this function, paste it over here, and this time just change the name from create play pause pending intent to create next pending intent, and simply change the action from play pause to next. These three function will eventually return me pending intents. So for the previous, I'm gonna use here create previous pending intent. For the next, and in place of icon I'm gonna use here next. Similarly for the pending intent, I'm using here create next pending intent. Now in between them we are having our play pause section. So play underscore pause. So this is actually used to play or pause our media track, and for this I'm using here play. So this play and pause icon is totally dependent whether our media player is playing or not. So for that, first I'm gonna create my media player on the top. So private val media player, and this media player is initialized with the help of media player, and make sure to use here var. So now go back to your send notification function and check if our media player is playing. We have to show an icon r.drawable.pause, else we have to show the play one. And here I'm gonna use here create play pause pending intent. So we are having three different action button for our notification. Now I'm gonna use here a small icon r.drawable.ic launcher background, and for the large icon I'm gonna use here bitmap factory decode resource, and I'm using this big image. So first simply pass your resource. Next we have to mention the ID of our drawable. So r.drawable.bigimage and build it. Okay, so now we are going to use here media player application. So for the media player application we have to create a separate style for media player notification. We are having here style naming variable with the help of our notification compat, and make sure this notification compat is coming from androidx.media.application package. Here we are having media style, and in this media style we are having set show actions in compact view. So I want to show my all the action buttons, so 0, 1 and 2. This is our style. Now it's time to use this style. So go to your notification, use here set style and pass your style. Now it's time to send this notification. So check if our build.version.stk int, if it is greater than or equals to build version code tiramisu. On that case we have to check whether our user have given the permission for post notification or not. So for that we are having here context compact.checkCell permission, pass your context, next the notification which is post underscore notifications. Import this thing. If it is equals to package manager dot permission granted, on that case I'm gonna show my notification. So in order to show notification I'm using here start foreground, because I want to start a foreground service. We have to send the ID and next the notification. So this is for the tiramisu or above tiramisu version. Else I'm gonna use start foreground, pass the ID and the notification. So we are pretty much done with our notification function. So this function is actually used to send notifications. Now it's time to begin with our on start command. So when user create our service with the help of start service, on that case on start command block will trigger. So first I'm gonna check my intent. If it is not null, on that case I'm gonna use my intent action. If our intent action is a type of previous, then we are having some logic, next we are having next, lastly we are having play pause. If it is not the case, I'm having here private function play, and in this play you have to pass your track, and in this I'm gonna use my media player and reset its state. After that I'm gonna use media player and initialize this thing with a new media player. Now it's time to set up our URI. So media player, we are having here set data source. In this you can see we are having a lot of option, but I'm gonna choose here the first one, which is context and the URI. So for the context, simply pass this. For the URI, I'm gonna create a function, and this function is actually used to convert your drawable resource into URI. So here we are having a function naming get raw URI, and this will convert our drawable resource into URI. Here I'm gonna use it, and in place of ID I'm gonna use my track ID. After that I'm gonna use media player, call prepare async. Once it will prepare, I'm gonna use here set on prepared listener. So this block will trigger when our media player is prepared. I'm using here media player and simply start its execution. I'm gonna use here send notification and pass the track. And one more thing, on the top I'm having a mutable state flow. Here we are having a variable, and the variable name is current track. This thing is initialized with the help of mutable state flow, and the type would be track. Initialize this thing with track. And one more thing, we are having a music list. This is initialized with the help of mutable list of type would be track, and make sure to use here var. So now go to your music binder, and here we are having few functions. The first function is actually used to expose our service instance, and the next function is used to set up our music list. So I'm gonna call this set music list, and list of track is coming from the component. Use your music list and update this thing with list that we are receiving from the component. So now go to your else, and in this else, first thing first, I'm gonna use my current track, update its value. Its initial value is coming from the songs dot get 0, and just below to it I'm gonna use my play function and play the current track. So we are done with else section. Now it's time to create 3 different functions which actually used to handle previous, next and play pause action. Here I'm gonna create a function, and the function name is play pause. If our media player is playing, on that case I'm gonna simply pause it, else I'm gonna release it and update my notifications. So in this notification you have to pass the track, so track is stored in current track. So this is for the play pause. Now it's time to create a function for the next. So first I'm gonna use my media player and reset its values. Just below to it I'm gonna reinitialize my media player with new media player instance. Now it's time to calculate the index of the current song. So for that I'm using here index. From the music list I'm gonna calculate the index of my current track. So once we receive the current index, I'm gonna write some logic to get the next index. So we are having here next index variable, and this is initialized from index. I'm gonna add 1 in it and take mod, and in this mod we're gonna pass our music list size. So this will give me the next index, and after that I'm gonna create new variable naming next item, and with the help of music list get I'm gonna pass my next index. This will give me the next item. I'm gonna use my media player set data source, pass my context, and next we have to pass the URI. So this URI is coming from get raw URI, and the requirement of get raw URI is our raw resource ID. So this raw resource ID is coming from next item dot ID. After that media player prepare itself, and once it prepare it will execute set on prepare listener. So in this we are having one function naming on prepare, so that function will trigger, and once that function will trigger I'm gonna simply start media player. Just below to it I'm gonna update my notification. So in this notification I'm gonna use my current track value. So let's update this current track. So once we receive the next item, just below to it I'm gonna update my current track with the help of next item. So we are done with the next. Now it's time to write for the previous. So again media player reset, and after that I'm gonna initialize my media player with new media player. Now it's time to calculate the current index. So this current index is coming from music list index of current track value, and now it's time to calculate the previous index. So for that I'm gonna call this previous index. If our index is less than 0, on that case I'm gonna use my music list size -1 and simply use it. else I'm gonna use my index, subtract 1 in it, and simply return this thing. So this will update my previous index, and once we are getting the previous index, we will also receive the previous item. So this previous item is coming from our music list. Get pass your previous index, update your current track. So current track, update this thing with previous item. Use your media player, set up its data source, pass the context, use get raw URI, and in this you can pass your raw resource ID of your mp3 file, which is coming from current track value.id. Media player prepare itself. After that, once it will prepare, it will hit set on prepared listener, and in this I'm gonna start playing the media track and also update my notifications. So pass your current track value. So go to your on start command. So in the previous I'm gonna use previous, in the next I'm gonna use next, in the play pause I'm gonna use play pause. Now I'm gonna create two different mutable state flow, and this mutable state flow contains the information of our duration, like maximum duration or the current duration of the track that we are playing. So for that, on the top I'm gonna create these two mutable state flow. So private while, first we are having max duration, initialize this thing with mutable state flow, and type is float, and that's why I'm using here 0f as initial value. Next we are having here private while current duration, initialize this thing with mutable state flow and type is float. And one more variable I want here is private while scope. So with the help of Kotlin scope, I'm gonna initialize this thing, and in place of dispatcher I'm gonna use my dispatcher main. So here we are having a function, and the function name is update duration. Use your scope, launch an echo routine. So first I'm gonna check my media player is playing or not. So if it is not playing, I'm simply return it. If it is playing, on that case I'm gonna update my max duration. So for that I'm using my max duration, update it, and this value is coming from my media player dot duration. Typecast this thing into float. I'm gonna use here while loop and execute this while loop for eternity, and in this I'm gonna use my current duration, and this current duration will be updated from media player dot current position, and simply typecast this thing into float and also produce 1 second delay. Alright, so we are done with this block. So we are done with our update duration. Now I'm gonna take this job in variable. So for that, on the top we require a variable job, private var. I'm gonna call this job and type would be job. Initialize this thing with null. So now it's time to take this job in my job variable. Now go to your next function and simply use your job and cancel it. Similarly for the previous, make sure to cancel the previous job, otherwise you will find some problems when you are executing your music. So once you cancel this thing, go to your set on prepared listener, and just below to your send notification you can call update duration. Similarly for the next track, update duration, and for the play we are having function play. In this I'm using the same thing, update duration. So this will eventually update my mutable state flow, and we can use that mutable state flow in my main activity, or you can say the component. Go to your inner class music binder and create few functions that will expose all of this mutable state flow. So for that, first we are having a function, and the function name is current duration, and this function is eventually expose my current duration. Similarly we are having one more function, and the function name is max duration, and this is used to expose my max duration. And one more variable I want here is private while is playing. So this is used to check in the component whether our music is playing or not. So for that I'm having here mutable state flow, type is boolean, and initial value is false. So go to your send notification function, and in this send notification on the top you can use your is playing, update its value based on the media player is playing or not. Now go to your music binder class, and here simply create one more function, and the function name is playing, and this time you can simply expose your is playing that we are having in our service. We are pretty much done with our music player service. Now go to your manifest and make sure to register this service. So here I'm gonna do it. service name is music service, exported is false, enable is true. So I'm gonna use here foreground service. So for that we have to tell explicitly our manifest the foreground service type. So this is a media playback, so use media playback. On the top you have to use few more permission. So the first permission is for the foreground service. One more we are having here, foreground media playback. So these are the functions that we have to use. Now we are done with our music player service. Go to your main activity and start with our user interface. In this we are having few variables. The first variable is connection, and I'm gonna use here service connection. In this we are having two functions, on service connected and on service disconnected. On the top we are having few more variables. The first variable is playing. This is a mutable state flow, type would be boolean, and I'm gonna initialize this thing with false. Next we are having a max duration, mutable state flow, initialize this thing with 0f. Similarly we are having current duration, initialize this thing with mutable state flow 0f. Next we are having my current track, so current track, initialize this thing with mutable state flow, type would be track, and I'm using here track to initialize my mutable state flow. Private wire service, make sure the type of our service is music player service, and I'm gonna initialize this thing with null. We are having one more variable naming is bound, so this act as a flag. Now go to your on service connected. So this block will trigger once we got connected from our service, and change this thing from p1 to binder. Update the value of your service with your binder. Typecast this binder to music binder, and this will have a function naming get service. So use that service and initialize your service. Now I'm gonna use here lifecycle scope, launch an echo routine, use your binder. In this we are having is playing function. So simply collect the latest value and update your is playing value. Similarly we are having few more variables. So for that I'm using lifecycle scope, launch a new coroutine. With the help of binder we are having max duration, collect the latest emission and update our max duration. So this is for the max duration. Similarly we are having binder dot current duration, collect the latest emission and update your current duration value. Next we are having one more lifecycle launch. So basically it will create a new coroutine, and in this I'm using my binder. So this time I'm using is playing, collect the latest emission and update my is playing value. Go to your music player service and create one more function in your music binder. So the function name is get current track. Use your service instance and return the current track. Go to your main activity, use lifecycle scope, launch a new coroutine, binder we are having here get current track, collect the latest emission and update our current track value. These are the things will be happens when we connect it with our service. And lastly in the on service connected I'm gonna update my is bound to true. And once we got disconnected, I'm gonna update my is bound value to false. So now we will begin with our user interface. So in our scaffold, we are having top app bar, and I'm gonna use my top app bar. In the title, I'm using text, and text will say us music player. Okay, reformat it. And our top app bar also contains actions, and in our top app bar we are having actions. So in this action we are having two different icon button. So first icon button is used to start our service, and next icon button is used to stop our service. So for that first we are having icon button. In this we are using image vector icons default play. Content description would be null, and when user click to this icon button we gonna start our service. So first we have to create an intent, import this intent. In this pass your context and the component. So my component is music player service class.java, start the service, and in this pass your intent, and after that I'm gonna bind my service simultaneously. So bind service, pass your intent. Next we have to pass our service connection object, and lastly the flag. So flag is bind auto create. So this is for the first icon button. Next I'm gonna create one more icon button that has icon in it. So icons default close, content description would be null, and when user click to this icon button I'm gonna create an intent one more time, pass my context, and next the component, which is music player service class dot java. Stop the service, pass your intent, and lastly unbind your service. So in this, the requirement of this function would be connection. All right, so now it's time to begin with our main content. So in the scaffold, I'm gonna use column. This column having modifier fill max size, and I'm gonna use my scaffold inner padding, and also in the column I'm gonna use its vertical arrangement on the center and its horizontal alignment on the center. Okay, so let's begin with our main content. So first I'm gonna create few states over here. So this track is initialized with the help of current track, and I'm gonna collect this thing in a form of state. Similarly, we are having the max duration. So this is initialized with the help of max duration, and I'm gonna collect this thing in a form of state. Next we are having current. Initialize this thing with current duration, collect as state. We are having one more, is playing, and initialize this thing with is playing, collect as state. First we are having an image. We have to pass our painter resource. So this painter resource is coming from our track dot image. Content description would be null. I'm using here modifier fill max width, height would be 300 dp. Let me import this dp. We are having here content scale, so I'm gonna use crop. And one more thing, I'm gonna use clip and use a rounded corner shape of 24 dp. Just below to it I'm having my text. So this text will show us the track name, material theme, typography, headline large, and my font weight is bold. Again I'm gonna use spacer to make some space, 12 dp. Next we are having row. In this row we are having text, so this text will eventually show us the current duration, and lastly we are having one more text. This text will eventually show us the maximum duration. In this I'm gonna use my max duration, divide this thing with 1000, convert this thing into a string. Similarly for the current duration, I'm using here current, divide this thing with 1000 and convert this thing into a string. In between we are having slider, and the value of this slider is coming from the current. On value change will do nothing. In this we are having one parameter naming value range. So in this you can set the slider range. So for me I am using 0f to my max. So this is my slider range. Now in my row I'm using modifier fill max width and its vertical alignment on the center. And in the slider I'm having modifier, its weight would be 1f. And also I want some padding from horizontally. So due to that reason I'm using padding horizontal, it's 16 dp. Alright, so that's it for the row. Now I'm having a spacer, modifier height would be 12 dp. Again I'm having a row. This row is having modifier fill max width, and also I'm using padding. Horizontally is 16 dp. And all the content will be vertically aligned on the center. And in this row we are having three different icon button. So this icon button contain icon, and I'm using the painter resource. So painter resource are dot drawable dot previous, and content description would be null. So when user click to the previous, I am simply using my service and use the previous. Okay, so simply copy this icon button, paste it over here. Now this time I'm using play pause. Now this play pause dependent on the media player, whether it is playing or not. So if is playing is true, on that case I'm gonna use painter resource r dot drawable dot pause. Else I'm gonna use play. So change this previous to play. And when user click onto this button, on that case I'm using its play pause method. Similarly, just copy this stuff, paste it over here. This is actually used to play the next track. So remove this thing, and instead of using this if else condition, you can just use painter resource and pass the next icon. Alright, so that's it for the UI. Now go on the top. We are having few problems, and the problem is top app bar. So make sure to use experimental material 3 API on top of your onCreate method, because this is an experimental API. Alright, so now I'm gonna execute my application. Alright, so our app is executing. Now when I click to this icon button, so it will ultimately start my service. So yeah, our music is running and this is our notification, but this notification is not looking like a media player notification, but we'll fix it. So when I click to the next button, alright, so our application is crashing. So this application is crashing because we haven't set up my music list. So for that, use binder, set music list and update your music list that is present in the service. Now go to your music player service. In the send notification, we have to attach one thing in our notification. So here we have to create a variable and the variable name is session. Initialize this thing with media session compat. In this we have to mention our context and the tag. So I'm passing my context and in place of tag I'm gonna call this music. Go to your style. In this style we are having set media session. Requirement of this thing is token. So use your session and pass your session token. Alright, so now when you execute your application, so when I click to this play icon, see song start playing, and this time your notification will looks like Spotify notification. Okay, so when I click next, see our second song start playing and correspondingly our UI is also updating. Now when I click here next button, see third song start playing. When I click previous, second song start playing. What will happen if I click to the pause play button? So it pause and yeah, it crashes. So let's see why it is happening. So here I'm using release. So this is a problem. Instead of release, we have to use start. Now re-execute our application. Okay, so start playing the music. Click to the next and pause, play. This time our application is not crashing and also it starts the second track. When I click to this thing, so it will eventually pause my track. Now see the notification, see it will reflect the same thing. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you got the idea how we can use foreground service and bound service together, and most of the production application will use this approach because this approach is more convenient compared to a single foreground service or bound service approach. So yeah, we will meet in our next video where we will discuss something new about Android. Till that, goodbye.